In the spring of 2015, a teenage boy vanished from a quiet neighborhood without a sound. No witnesses, no clues, just two dogs returning home, alone. For 8 years, silence. Then one morning he reappeared, disoriented, nameless, and holding a piece of the past that shouldn't exist. What he carried back wasn't a story. It was a secret someone spent years trying to bury. Before we begin, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. It really means a lot to know that you're with us. We're going through this together. Now, let me tell you what really happened. Snow began to fall early in the morning, each flake quietly clinging to the window pane, as if trying to call someone from beyond the past. House number 207 on Belmont Street was nothing remarkable. An old-style home with a low roof, dark wooden walls, and a fence broken on one side. But inside, time seemed to be stuck in a winter long gone. Mrs. Rosa sat in an armchair by the window, a worn wool scarf wrapped around her hands. On the small table beside her sat a cup of cold tea from the previous night. She hadn't drunk it. She didn't even remember pouring it. She sat there nearly motionless, yet her gaze was not empty. It moved slowly, drifting over each object in the room as though they were fragments of memories adrift. A gentle voice came from the kitchen. "Would you like something to eat? I made eggs and toast, just the way you like." Clara, her granddaughter-in-law, walked in with a gentle smile, though fatigue still lingered in her expression. She knelt before Mrs. Rosa, taking her hand. "Can you hear me, Grandma?" Mrs. Rosa nodded slightly, her eyes still fixed on the hallway leading to the back of the house. "It's going to snow harder soon. Let's stay inside today, all right?" She pressed her lips together. After a moment she spoke, as if only to herself. He didn't like snow. He always forgot to shut the dog kennel. Clara looked up at her, then out into the yard. The kennel was now just a decaying wooden frame beneath a layer of snow. "Who, Grandma?" Clara asked softly, as if not to break the moment. "Well, him. He even left his police uniform on the porch." Clara swallowed the words she wanted to say. She was used to this. Mornings when Mrs. Rosa spoke of her husband as if he were still alive. Luis, her husband, had passed away more than 30 years ago, but for her, time was a fragmented string, the days and months stretching and shrinking like breath. Clara stood up, adjusted Rosa's scarf, and walked back into the kitchen. As soon as she disappeared behind the wall, Mrs. Rosa suddenly turned her head, eyes fixed on the wooden door at the end of the hallway. Her hand rose, trembling but sure. "Rudy is in there," she whispered. The house had 5 rooms, 2 bedrooms, Luis's old study, a storage room, and one door that was always locked at the end of the hallway, leading to the basement. There was nothing unusual about the door. White paint, a round brass doorknob. But for Mrs. Rosa, it carried its own weight. Whenever she looked in that direction, her gaze shifted, from vague to tense, and sometimes to fear. When the family had first brought her home from the nursing facility to care for her, Clara once asked, "Why do you say Rudy is in there?" Mrs. Rosa looked at her as if the question had come from a stranger. She slowly shook her head, pointing with a gentle gesture. "Because every night he opens that door. He goes in and never comes out. But I hear him crying." Rudy. That name once echoed through the neighborhood like a quiet wound. A boy with a gentle smile, deep eyes, and a soft voice, who vanished one March afternoon, along with 2 little dogs. Time passed, and that name became something only mentioned when people needed an example of unsolved loss. His missing poster still clung to the utility poles behind the church, the paper yellowed with age. But to Mrs. Rosa, Rudy had never been a missing person. "He's in there," she repeated, louder this time, during dinner. Clara looked up, meeting eyes with her husband. Miguel, Mrs. Rosa's youngest son. He put his spoon down, a slight furrow in his brow. "You're daydreaming again, Mom," he said, voice tinged with irritation. Mrs. Rosa looked at them both, then back toward the hallway, as if weighing whether to say more. Then she turned away, silently chewing a piece of cold toast. Clara sighed. After the meal, she quietly got up and walked to the door. She tried the handle. Locked. Miguel saw and shook his head. "That's the old room. I locked it after Dad passed. There's nothing in there but some boxes." Clara nodded slightly, but her gaze paused at the bottom edge of the door. A small scratch, about a foot long, exposed the dark wood beneath the white paint, as if someone had once clawed or tried to open it from the inside. That night, Clara returned to the living room to clear the glass and saw that Mrs. Rosa was still sitting in the armchair, eyes open but unmoving. Clara gently touched her shoulder. "Grandma, it's late." Mrs. Rosa slowly turned, her lips forming silent words. "You don't believe me again. No one ever does. But every night I hear him." A chill crept up Clara's spine, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "Hear what, Grandma?" Mrs. Rosa raised a finger to her lips. "Shh." They both fell silent. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks in the door, accompanied by the faint rattle of dry branches against the wall. Then, a faint sound, like a soft rustling, came from the end of the hallway. Very faint, very brief. Clara turned her head toward it, the hairs on her arms standing up. She gripped Mrs. Rosa's hand tightly. "Maybe it's a mouse, Grandma?" Mrs. Rosa didn't answer. Her gaze had once again fallen upon that door. Back to 2015, Houston, the morning of March 6th. The sky hung heavy and gray, like a taut canvas stretched over the city. Cold winds swept through the north side neighborhood, rustling past iron fences and bare branches. In a small house at the end of the row, Rudy Farias clipped leashes onto his two dogs, Zeus and Hercules, then opened the door. "Just one round," Janie called from the kitchen. "Don't come back after dark." He turned, gave a soft smile, one corner of his mouth lifting in that habitual way. "I know, Mom. It's still sunny." He pulled up his hood and stepped down the porch, his shadow stretching across the rain-streaked concrete yard. The dogs wagged their tails, panting with excitement. The iron gate creaked shut behind him with a metallic groan. That was the last time anyone saw Rudy Farias leave the house. As darkness settled over the city, as traffic noise dwindled, and as Janie placed the rice pot on the table and sat to eat alone, she still believed her son was just a few minutes late. Maybe he'd stopped by the corner store, or was chatting with someone, or waiting for the rain to stop under an awning. But by 9 p.m., she began calling neighbors. No one had seen Rudy. By 10, she called the police. The two dogs returned just before midnight, dirty, soaked, one with a torn ear. No Rudy, no leashes, no note, just their panicked eyes and ragged breaths, like they had run far from something. The police took her statement and launched a search. The nearby woods, abandoned houses, even the drainage ditches around the neighborhood were combed through. But there was no trace. No shoes, no jacket, no phone. No footprints. Only a strange absence, as if the 17-year-old boy had vanished into thin air. Janie didn't wait. Just days later, she posted the first photo of Rudy on Facebook, a shy smile, curly hair, brown eyes, lit with something distant. "If anyone sees my son Rudy Farias, please call the police or message me. He went out walking the dogs and never came back. I just want my boy home, alive or dead. Please." The post was shared hundreds of times in a week. Local news stations reached out. Janie appeared on TV, her voice trembling, eyes swollen from crying. "I don't believe he'd run away. He loved his family. He wouldn't even kill a bee in the house. How could a boy like that just disappear?" People believed her. Her voice really did shake. The photos with her son, the old clips, Rudy dancing in the kitchen, Rudy hugging his dogs, Rudy smiling beside his birthday cake, all spread across the internet as proof of genuine grief. She organized prayer vigils, erected a large photo of Rudy at the local church, lit candles, sang hymns. Every month she wrote a new post. "Today is day 97 without you. I miss your voice, the scent of your shirt. I won't stop." In the early years, the Houston community nearly embraced Janie as a symbol of perseverance. Local papers called her the unbreakable mother. Every year, on March 6th, she stood outside the church wearing a shirt printed with her son's face, holding a sign, "Bring Rudy home." She created a Facebook group, sharing updates on the search, connecting with other families of the missing. Some who had been through similar pain sent her messages of encouragement. She replied to each one sometimes at 2 or 3 a.m. Then she began appearing on forums about missing persons, guesting on social media shows. Her voice grew steadier, tears less frequent, but her eyes deeper, darker. People said Janie had learned to speak like an activist, but no one blamed her. They believed that pain had become a scar etched into her heart. In 2018, exactly 3 years since his disappearance, a fake news story spread online. Someone claimed Rudy was spotted in another state. Janie quickly refuted it, posting his birth certificate, old photos, and physical descriptions. She would not allow false hope. "Don't let me hope for nothing. I've already lost enough." That post received thousands of shares. One user commented, "You're the strongest mother I've ever seen." Janie replied, "I'm not strong, I just have nothing left to lose." By the 6th year, the posts grew fewer. The Facebook group quieted. Prayer gatherings thinned out. The media moved on to newer stories, newer disappearances. But she never said Rudy was dead. In the house, a star-shaped nightlight still glowed every evening in Rudy's room. His photo sat beside the dining table. Sometimes, Janie spoke aloud, as if her son were sitting right there. Clara, the one who once stood silent before Mrs. Rose's haunted gaze, once met Janie at the grocery store a few years ago. "Do you still believe he's alive?" Janie didn't answer right away. She placed the milk carton into her basket, turned, and met her gaze without blinking. "I don't believe. I know." Clara didn't know what to say. But even after Janie disappeared behind the shelves, she still felt a chill down her spine. There was something in that voice, not grief, but a certainty so absolute it was almost frightening. Some neighbors began whispering about strange things. Someone had seen a young man coming and going from Janie's house at night. But when asked, she simply said it was a cousin. So Janie remained a mother who had lost her son. But once a year, on March 6th, Janie's gate still opened. A small table was placed in the yard, with flowers, Rudy's photo, and candles. She sat there, silent, staring into the void as if waiting for her boy to step through the doorway as though nothing strange had ever happened at all. So what kind of boy was Rudy? Before he disappeared, did he show any unusual signs? Was there anything noteworthy happening in his life? To understand what really happened, you need to know Rudy from the beginning. Pain in a family doesn't always arrive through shouting or arguments. Sometimes it lies quietly in the silences between the clatter of dishes or in the way eyes avoid each other at dinner. Rudy's home was such a place. In 2011, Rudy was 13 years old. That summer, the Houston heat was searing. Charles Rudy's older brother died in a motorcycle accident on Interstate 10, less than 2 miles from their home. They said he forgot to wear a helmet, or maybe he was racing with a friend. No one knew for sure. The bike skidded, Charles was thrown from his lane, struck a traffic light pole, and died instantly. The news reached the house just a few hours later. Janie collapsed on the chair, screaming her son's name until her voice turned hoarse and broke into silence. Rudy stood in the kitchen corner holding a bowl of cold rice, eyes wide and blank. He didn't cry then, nor the next night, but on Tuesday morning, he vomited blood as soon as he stepped out of his room. "Just the heat," the doctor said. Because he lost his brother, Clara thought. Charles was 7 years older than Rudy. The typical big brother, not great at school, loved sports, full of tricks, but always protective. They rode bikes around the neighborhood, played video games late into the night, even started a secret club in the backyard shed. The password was Zeus the Thunder God. After Charles died, Rudy spent many evenings sitting in his brother's room. He folded his clothes, wiped down the drawers, left everything exactly where it had been. Each morning before school, he would stand in front of the altar, touch the photo, and close his eyes. No one taught him to do that. He instinctively knew how to grieve alone. 3 months after Charles's death, another blow struck the family. Luis Farias, Rudy's father, a local patrol officer, was found dead by suicide in his car after work. He left behind a short handwritten note, but the police did not release its contents. Leaked reports suggested he was under investigation for traffic ticket fraud, issuing false citations to receive kickbacks, a minor form of corruption but one treated seriously. Luis's death was mentioned briefly in the morning news, then quietly disappeared from the headlines. Janie didn't hold a public funeral, nor did she allow anyone to mention him in the house again. Clara remembered once hearing her say over the phone, "He deserved to die. If he'd dragged my son into that shame, I couldn't live." From then on, Luis's name was never spoken, but Rudy kept a photo of his father in a secret box alongside a letter from Charles sent from summer camp in 2010. He buried both in a metal box beneath the mango tree in the backyard. Every year, on his father's birthday, he would sit under the tree, say nothing, pick one ripe mango, peel it, and place it on the ground. At 15, Rudy joined a grief support group at school for students who had lost loved ones. No one pushed him to. He signed up on his own. A social worker named Brandy once told Clara that Rudy was one of the most sensitive and thoughtful students she had ever met. He wrote beautifully, spoke little, but whenever he did, people listened. "That boy carries the sorrow of someone far older," she said. No bitterness, no drama, just a quiet understanding that life is what it is. One time Rudy wrote, "Whenever someone dies, they don't disappear. They just move into another room in the house of memory. Every day I open the door, visit them, sit for a while. Some rooms I still can't enter, it hurts too much. But I know they're there, waiting for me to grow stronger." The piece was posted on the school bulletin board and brought many students to tears. Rudy didn't like taking photos, but he kept a small sketchbook in his drawer. Inside were black and white pencil drawings, eyes, hands, silhouettes of figures facing away with no names, but Clara knew they were of Charles and his father. One day, when Clara came to visit, she saw Rudy holding a charcoal pencil, drawing a large circle with two figures standing opposite each other, heads bowed low. "What's that?" she asked. "A room no one wants to enter," Rudy replied without looking up. Despite his sadness, Rudy didn't become the troubled teen many had feared. He did well in school, knew how to cook, took care of the dogs and cats. When Janie cried after dinner, Rudy quietly cleaned up. When Grandma Rosa slipped in the bathroom, he was the first to run in. "I'm the only man left in the house," he once said. At one point, Miguel, his uncle, suggested enrolling Rudy in boxing classes to toughen him up. But Rudy refused. He didn't like violence, didn't like beating anyone. He just wanted others to be at peace. 1 week before he disappeared, Rudy posted his final message on Facebook. Just one line. "If one day I'm no longer here, please don't shout for me. Just whisper my name, I'll hear it." No one noticed at the time. The post got only 3 likes, no comments. A boy with just a few dozen online friends, in a world too busy to hear a whispered goodbye, yet no one knew it would be his last words. His life had long been a string of losses. At 13, Rudy witnessed his brother's death right before his eyes in a motorcycle crash. At 16, his father took his own life in a police car. And then, he was left with only his mother, the one person he could trust, the one person he could lean on. Then came June 29, 2023. A boy believed to be Rudy reappeared. What happened? Houston awoke to a sweltering morning, nothing out of the ordinary. Dry winds, a sun dulled behind thick clouds, and the constant hum of air conditioners in every ear. Along Fulton Avenue, traffic moved steadily as always. No one knew that something extraordinary was lying quietly outside St. Agnes Church. A homeless woman named Linda Morales was the first to discover the young man. She was looking for shade, and as she circled the building, she saw a figure curled up on the side of the church, his lower half soaked as if he'd been out in the rain, arms wrapped around his stomach, face turned toward the wall. "Are you okay?" Linda asked, stepping closer, but the figure didn't respond. There was only the sound of shallow, broken breathing, like his chest was trying to remind itself how to stay alive. Linda stepped back and called 911. Police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 patrol officers gently tapped the young man's shoulder. "Hey, kid." No reaction. They bent down. He was still breathing. His eyes were open but unfocused. When asked his name, he only shook his head, lips pressed tight, arms wrapped tightly around his body as if defending himself from something unseen. "You don't have any ID?" "No." A faint, broken whisper. When they checked his jacket pocket, there was only a single credit card, buried deep inside, wrapped in plastic. The name on the card, Janie Santana, issued in 2021. At the local precinct, after checking the database and matching the photo, a name flashed on the screen that made the entire room go silent for a moment. Rudy Farias IV, missing since 2015. The record was still active in the National Missing Persons Database. "No way," one officer muttered. A call was made immediately. On the other end, Janie's voice broke upon hearing the news. "It's my son? Are you sure? My Rudy? Oh my God." They asked her to come and confirm. That afternoon, Janie entered the interview room where the young man sat still silent, fingers interlocked, eyes fixed on the floor. It took her exactly 3 seconds to rush forward and hug him tightly, not crying, but shaking all over. "It's me. I'm here now, baby." He didn't hug her back, but he didn't pull away either. One of the officers quietly noted that detail in the report. Verification procedures began. Police collected DNA samples, photographs, fingerprints. The results confirmed it. This was indeed Rudy Farias, missing for 8 years. The news began to leak. Media outlets held back at first, waiting for official details, but online chatter surged. Missing boy returns after 8 years, like a fairy tale or the shape of a nightmare not yet fully formed. But what puzzled the police wasn't that Rudy had returned. It was how he reacted to everything around him. He barely spoke, avoided eye contact, asked nothing about his mother. In the initial soft questioning, when asked, "Where have you been these past 8 years?" he simply replied, "I don't really remember." "Did someone take you?" "No." "Who did you live with?" A pause. "With someone I knew." "What's their name?" "I don't know anymore." Rudy's voice drifted like wind down a drainpipe hollow, fleeting, neither resisting nor cooperating. Janie told the press that her son had been drugged, kidnapped, brainwashed, and that she would have him fully examined and begin psychological therapy, that this was a miracle. She posted a photo of the two of them hugging on Facebook. The caption read, "God has returned my son to me. If you don't believe in miracles, look into the eyes of a mother who searched for her child for 8 years. Thousands of likes. Comments of congratulations. Heart emojis flooding in. But one detail was overlooked or downplayed: the credit card Rudy carried. It had been issued by Janie only 2 years earlier, meaning that for at least the last 2 years she had known where Rudy was. When questioned, Janie said, "I gave it to him in case something bad happened. I didn't know he still had it." The police didn't push further. No one wanted to be the one to investigate a mother who had just found her child. That night at the medical station, a nurse named Melissa came to check on Rudy. He still said nothing, only nodded when offered water, shook his head when asked if he wanted food. But when Melissa left the room to retrieve some paperwork in the hallway, she heard a faint mumbling coming from inside. She turned back, stood at the doorway. A small voice, halting as if relearning how to form words after years of silence. "Rudy is not my name. My name is Dolph. Don't call me Rudy." Melissa reported it to her supervisor, but no one paid attention. They had the name, the paperwork. The case was about to be closed. A mother and her son had reunited. That was what mattered, right? But in Melissa's medical report, one line remained. Patient reacts to the name Rudy with shoulder contraction, avoidance of eye contact, and signs of self-rejection. That line was never read aloud at any press conference. Elsewhere in the city, Mrs. Rosa sat in the dark, staring at the TV screen where news was being broadcast about the boy Rudy Farias found. She said nothing, just kept watching until Clara turned off the TV. "You're tired, Grandma. Don't watch anymore." Mrs. Rosa nodded gently, then turned her head toward the hallway. The last door remained closed. She whispered, just loud enough for Clara to hear, "That's not him. That boy is no longer Rudy." No one said it out loud at first. No one wanted to be the first. But when the 6 p.m. news on KHOU 11 showed an image of Rudy Farias, long hair, sparse beard, vacant eyes, neighbors in the north side felt as though something had closed around their throats. Monica Herrera, who lived next door on the right, dropped her spoon halfway through her soup. The voice of the anchor played from the TV. Rudy Farias, the boy reported missing since 2015, is believed to have returned after 8 years in hiding. The family confirms it. Police confirm it. An unbelievable story, but true. Monica stared closely at the face on the screen, then turned to her husband. "Honey, look carefully. Isn't that Dolph?" Her husband Hector frowned. He didn't answer immediately. "That's Dolph. Who else? The kid who always walked the dogs past here, the one who bought cigarettes even though he looked like a kid." "But they said he's been missing for 8 years." "No, he's been living next door for 8 years. Dolph. That was the name people in the neighborhood had for the skinny, quiet young man who lived with Janie Santana. He never spoke much, but was always polite. Sometimes he helped Janie wash the car, sometimes he walked the dogs, and a few times he went with her to the convenience store at night. Everyone assumed he was a nephew, or maybe a family friend staying over. Janie never clarified, but she never fully hid it either. The boy still appeared in the yard, occasionally watering plants, sweeping leaves, taking out the trash. Once, Monica even borrowed his ladder while putting up Christmas lights. "What's your name, dear?" Monica had asked. "Dolph," he replied without a smile. He went with Janie to the store every Saturday night, sat in the car while she shopped. People knew his face. They called him Janie's boy. But no one knew he was Rudy. Or rather, no one ever thought to consider it. When the name Rudy Farias appeared on TV, neighbors all over Northside began calling each other. Messages spread quickly. "That's the guy at Janie's place. I saw him just last month." So, did Janie lie? One of the first to decide to break the silence was Lorenzo Garcia, an employee at the Shell station 3 blocks from Janie's house. "I remember clearly. He used to work nights, helped his mom clean the floor, restock items. His name was Dolph. I called him that for 2 years. He called the local news station. At first, no one believed him. Then a reporter came to interview him and took down his account. And now they say he was missing? I thought Janie just wanted to keep her son's record private. I respected that. Who would have thought they faked the name entirely?" As suspicion spread, Janie began responding. Several neighbors said she reached out via calls or messages, using a tone they described as calm but strange. "Please don't spread rumors. The media is vicious. They'll hurt him again. Dolph and Rudy are different people. Don't get them confused. I know exactly what I'm saying. If anyone says something untrue, my lawyer will take action." Some people were intimidated. Others were furious. "I watched that boy grow up. I'm not stupid," Monica later said in an interview. The neighborhood began to split into 2 camps. One said, "Maybe Rudy has trauma. Maybe Janie is protecting him." The other said, "No, she hid him for 8 years. Something's not right." People whispered, but no one was certain enough to file an official report. No one wanted to be accused of falsely accusing a grieving mother. One anonymous neighbor shared that in 2019, they once called the police after hearing Janie yelling at Rudy in the yard. But when officers arrived, no one opened the door. No one remembers clearly how that played out, but the whole thing was brushed aside quickly. One July afternoon, a few weeks after Rudy was found, a neighbor named Angela decided to confront Janie directly. "I saw Rudy grow up. I know that face. I just want to understand what's going on." Janie opened the door halfway. She didn't invite her in. "It's none of your business. People are saying crazy things. You think you know more than I do?" "I don't think anything, but that boy deserves the truth." Janie shut the door without another word. The next day, Angela found a pre-printed letter in her mailbox. It read, "We are monitoring anyone attempting to harm our family. All interference will be handled legally." No signature, but the last line was handwritten, the scrawl uneven. "You have no idea what Dolph has been through." Beneath the calm surface, it seemed the whole neighborhood knew the truth, but no one dared say it fully, because speaking it would raise too many questions. Why didn't Rudy cry out for help? Why did police visit Janie's home before and never notice? And if Rudy had been held then for the past 8 years, had the entire community seen it and turned away? Clara, the only one still quietly following the story from a distance, once drove past Janie's house one evening. The porch light was on. A figure walked around the garden, watering plants, slow, stiff, as if relearning how to stand under the moonlight. She didn't stop the car. But in her rearview mirror she saw the figure turn to look, and in that brief moment, the eyes had no age, no name, nothing at all. Just a human-shaped emptiness. People kept asking, why didn't he run away? Why didn't he call someone? Why didn't he scream? But what they often don't understand is that some prisons need no locks, and some children don't know they're imprisoned because their captor wears the mask of love. March 7th, 2015. The day after Rudy disappeared. He returned home. No one greeted him. No one was looking. There were no police cars waiting, just his mother Janie opening the door, staring at him in silence. Rudy was drenched, his feet streaked with blood. He lowered his head like a child cast out of church. "I'm sorry." Janie didn't hug him. She only said, "Do you even know what you just did?" He shook his head. "You just made all of Houston believe you're dead. You drove me insane. You brought the police to our house. They're angry, and you know they don't like boys like you." "But I just went out. I didn't know." "Doesn't matter. Now you've got a record for running away, for disobeying police, for unpaid tickets. If they find out you're back, they'll take you." Rudy froze. "I didn't know." Janie sat down, her voice softening. "You can't go outside anymore, Rudy. I'll take care of you. Just stay here. No one can know you're back. You'll have to use a different name." "What name?" "Dolph. From now on, you're Dolph." Rudy believed her. He wanted to believe her, because the world outside was too big and the fear inside him was as small as a dying ember. He needed something to hold on to, and if his mother said stay was safe, then he would stay. So Dolph was born no ID, no past, known to no one. He cut his hair, changed his clothes, deleted all his social media accounts. No one asked, no one searched. The world turned away as if Rudy had never existed. Janie locked the back door, locked the basement door, and locked the door in her son's heart. For the next 8 years, Rudy lived like a shadow. He wasn't chained, he wasn't locked in, but he wasn't allowed to leave either. Every outing was with his mother to take out the trash or to shop late at night. Every journey was short, repetitive, and never ended at a place called freedom. Janie always went with him. She sat in the passenger seat, phone in hand. "If you run, I just have to make a call. The cops will hunt you down like a stray dog." He had no phone of his own. If he needed to call someone, he had to borrow hers. But Rudy had no one to call, no friends, no family. All his old connections faded like smoke. He once asked, "Mom, does anyone still remember me?" Janie answered without pause, "No. You're the shame of this family. No one wants to hear your name again." During the day, Rudy cleaned the house, did laundry, cooked meals. At night, he helped Janie clean up at convenience stores or small restaurants paid under the table, no name required. He never saw any of the money. Everything was under Janie's name. He once asked, "If I'm working, why don't I get paid?" "Because you don't exist, remember?" His bedroom was small, more like a storage space, but he didn't always sleep there. Some nights, Janie would call out, "My bed's cold, come lie with me for a bit." He didn't dare refuse. At first he sat, then he lay down. Once she hugged him from behind. He froze, barely breathing. "It's okay. I just need warmth," she whispered, her hand sliding across his chest. Rudy never told anyone. He never resisted. He thought, maybe this is love. I'm her only son. She's in pain. I have to endure it. The lines blurred bit by bit, not by force, but through guilt, debt, and a twisted version of love imposed on him. There were nights Rudy dreamed of running. In his sleep, he climbed fences, crossed train tracks, opened the basement door, but when he woke up, it was always the same ceiling with the creaking fan. He once kept a journal, but Janie found it and tore it up. Dolph doesn't need memories. Dolph only needs the present. After that, he stopped writing, stopped thinking, stopped asking. He lived like a role with no lines, no audience. At some point, Rudy stopped wondering why he hadn't left. Like a bird that didn't know it had wings, he folded himself into the corner of the house, ate on time, did his tasks, and remained silent if anyone asked his name. When people called him Dolph, he nodded. When someone stared a second too long, he looked away. When night fell, the fear of not finishing chores before his mother returned was worse than death. In those 8 years, Rudy met dozens of people, shopkeepers, neighbors, members of the community. No one recognized him as Rudy. No one questioned why he lived like a ghost beside an aging mother. No one imagined that the very woman who had cried on TV over her missing son was the one keeping him not with ropes, but with words. Words like, "If you leave, I'll die." "No one will believe you, Rudy. You're all I have. No one loves you like I do. I lost you once. There won't be a second time." Those words seeped into him until they became belief. Then they became shackles. So when he finally collapsed in front of a church, it might not have been the first time he fell, just the first time the world was ready to see it. But even then, when they called him Rudy, he still whispered, "I'm Dolph," because the walls of that prison were still standing inside his heart, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to leave. Now, all eyes began to turn toward Janie, the mother, the storyteller, the woman who cried on television for 8 years. But in the end, who was she, really? Janie Santana had once been called the resilient mother. On television, she wept uncontrollably, spoke about Rudy, about pain, about faith. People believed her. Tearful eyes, trembling voices, the public adored that. But behind the tear-drenched mask, Janie wasn't just a grieving mother. She was a system, a machine, a director orchestrating carefully crafted roles, and the audience had no idea they were being led. The first person who dared to speak up was Antonia, a tiny woman living in a nursing home, 86 years old, Janie's own mother. She had once lived with her daughter, or more accurately, had been confined to a moldy room where the floor was sticky, the light bulb broken, and flies circled bowls of cold rice. A social worker made a surprise visit in 2018 after receiving an anonymous tip. The report noted, "The elderly resident was found in unsanitary conditions, with pressure sores on the skin, a dry tongue, and eyes shut tight. There was no fan, no pillow. When asked, she only said, 'I don't dare bother Janie.'" There was no evidence of beatings, no visible violence, only neglect, invisibility, and a coldness that felt like imprisonment. Another civil court document dated 2012 recorded that Janie had been accused by 2 men of committing bigamy. According to the records, she married Daniel Vega in 2005, then married Carlos P. in 2009 without divorcing the first. By 2011, she was living with a third man under a new name, Janie Vasquez, and filed for another marriage license in Oklahoma. All of it was handled quietly. No one went to jail. No one pressed charges. The men just wanted to cut ties and never speak of her again. One of them told reporters later, "Janie had a strange charm, very gentle at first. Then suddenly she was controlling everything. By the time I realized it, she had used my name to open credit accounts." On social media, she appeared as a devoted mother. But if you looked closer, many of her posts were flooded with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of glowing comments from newly created accounts with no real profile photos, odd names, and often just a single post. Upon deeper investigation, it was found that many of the accounts shared the same IP address and wrote in strikingly similar style. "Janie is an angel on earth. Your son will come home, I believe it. No one loves their child like you do." Several people tried messaging those accounts, none responded. One network analyst commented, "This is a textbook case of manufacturing fake consensus. If one person cries and 100 others stand around nodding, you'll believe those tears are real." From 2016 to 2022, Janie launched at least 5 different GoFundMe campaigns, raising a combined total of over $35,000. Each campaign had a near-identical title: "Help me bring Rudy home. Legal and investigator fees for my missing son." Every dollar is a candle of hope. After Rudy was found, some donors began asking, what was that money used for? Were any investigators hired? Any lawyers? No answers came. The campaigns were quietly deleted within weeks of Rudy's return. A former volunteer named Marcia Lee, who had helped Janie organize a prayer vigil in 2019, recalled, "When I asked for receipts for the banner prints, she got angry. When I asked for donation records, she said I was insulting her faith. She always said, 'I'm the mother. I know what needs to be done.'" Sure. Marcia later stepped back, but when she planned to post a warning online, she received 3 messages from 3 unknown accounts warning her to stop making things up. She stayed silent after that. Later, as the truth began to unravel, many in the community felt betrayed. "I cried for her," one person wrote. "I printed Rudy's photo and posted it in front of my shop. I sent $50 because I thought a mother deserved help. They didn't know who to be angry with, Rudy, Janie, or themselves for believing someone who knew exactly how to crack her voice at the right moment. But perhaps most chilling was how precisely Janie knew the perfect amount of sympathy to summon and just enough ambiguity to avoid suspicion. She didn't scream. She didn't rebel. She seeped into people's trust like water through a leaky roof, slow, but enough to rot the foundation. A fraud investigator once said at a seminar, "The best con artists aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who cry when needed and vanish when questioned." When asked about Rudy Farias, he just smiled. No, not about Rudy, about his mother. Quanell X is no stranger in Houston. A social activist, he had appeared on television many times to defend the rights of people of color, the oppressed, and victims of domestic violence. He was sharp-tongued, a good listener, and most importantly, unafraid of confronting power. So when Janie Santana reached out to invite him directly, many were surprised. "I thought he might help my son open up," she explained. "Rudy won't talk, but maybe, if it's him, he'll trust him." The meeting took place in a small room at a community mental health center. No cameras, just a round table, 2 chairs, a bottle of water, and an air thick like unfallen rain. Rudy sat curled into himself, hands on his lap, eyes staring into the gaps between his fingers. Janie sat beside him, doing almost all the talking. "He's still not stable, doesn't remember much. I try to help, but sometimes he worries me. Please, don't push him if he's not ready." Quanell nodded. "I understand, but let me speak with him alone, just for a moment." Janie hesitated, then stood, pulled her phone from her pocket, and stepped outside. The door closed. The room was left with just 2 people, one who had made a life out of facing hard truths, and one who had forgotten how to breathe freely. Neither said anything for the first minute. Quanell opened the water bottle and slid it toward Rudy. "You want a drink?" Rudy shook his head. "All right. I'm not here to investigate. I'm not the police. I'm just someone who grew up in a house where yelling was normal." Rudy looked up slightly. His eyes met Quanell's briefly, then drifted away. "I heard you once tried to say something and no one listened." Silence. "You don't need to tell everything. Just start with what felt wrong." A shaky breath. Rudy's fingers twitched. Then his voice broke through hoarse, fragmented. "I came home the day after I went missing. Mom wasn't angry, but she said the police were after me, that if they found me, I'd be arrested, hurt. Why? Because I had tickets. And because I ran away." Quanell nodded, not interrupting. "Mom said I couldn't be Rudy anymore. I had to be Dolph, not tell anyone the truth, not write anything, not go anywhere, alone." "And you believed her?" "At first, no. But over time, I had nothing else to believe." A long breath. "She made me do everything. Shop, clean, take out trash, work at night, no pay. Did anyone ever see this?" "Lots of people, but everyone thought I was her nephew." Rudy paused as if something heavy in his throat refused to go down. "Some nights, she called me into her room, said her bed was cold, said I was the only one who understood her." Quanell didn't blink. "Did she touch you?" "No, she didn't hit me, didn't tie me up, but—" Rudy looked up, eyes brimming. "She made me bathe with her, sleep beside her, over and over. I didn't dare. I didn't know where the line was anymore. She said nothing was wrong, that I was her husband." The room fell silent, like it had been vacuum sealed. "Husband?" she said. "I lost a husband once. Now I have you. You love me, don't you?" "How old were you when it started?" 17. "And this continued for 8 years?" "Not always, like that. But she controlled everything. If I said no, she'd say, 'I'll take pills, I'll die, and you'll get arrested.'" Quanell lowered his head. He didn't record, he didn't take notes, but he remembered every word. When Janie returned, Rudy had already dried his face. He sat straighter. Not because he was okay, but because he had spoken something he'd never dared to before. Janie looked at them both, her tone casual, like someone returning with a glass of water. "All good?" "Yes," Rudy answered. And Quanell said just one thing. "I think this young man needs protection as soon as possible." The very next day, Quanell held a press conference. Before cameras from more than 10 media outlets, he said, "I believe Rudy Farias was never missing. I believe he was psychologically imprisoned. I believe there was long-term emotional and physical abuse. And I believe his mother, Janie Santana, deceived the entire system." Reporters were stunned. The story took a sharp turn. But just days later, Rudy appeared in another interview, arranged by a charitable organization. The interviewer asked, "Is it true your mother sexually abused you?" Rudy gave a faint smile. His eyes were distant. "No, no one ever did anything to me. My mom loves me. It was all just a misunderstanding." Confusion surged once again. Quanell was criticized. "Did you make it up?" Police said, "There's no evidence." Some believed Rudy had memory disorders, trauma, or was simply afraid. Because in every photo of him, from 2015 to now, Rudy's eyes never hold a gaze for more than 3 seconds. And his voice, whether affirming or denying, carries no weight, as if his words weren't meant to liberate, but to shield. In the diary of an anonymous counselor, there's a line that reads, "Truth isn't the only thing survivors need. Sometimes they need a safe place to lie until they're strong enough to tell the truth." Rudy perhaps is still somewhere in between. On a July morning, less than 3 weeks after Rudy re-entered the public eye, the Houston Police Department held an official press conference. The press was out in full force. Microphones pointed toward a wooden podium draped in blue cloth. The police department's emblem hung behind the speaker, a captain named McLean, standing upright, firm, reading from a printed statement. "After internal investigation and review of all available information, we conclude there is no clearly identifiable criminal offense in the case concerning Rudy Farias. An adult individual choosing not to engage with the community or to live in isolation does not constitute a violation of the law. There is no medical evidence confirming physical or sexual abuse. This case will be closed unless new, credible information emerges." A few short lines, read in under 2 minutes, shattered every remaining hope for justice. No charges, no extended investigation, no commitment to mental health support for Rudy, no apologies, no admission of failure. Rudy, once hailed as a miracle after 8 years missing, had now become a closed file. An ending no one could believe was an ending. In a small house not far away, Maria Sanchez, Rudy's biological aunt, hurled the TV remote to the floor. She stood up, trembling. "No crime? Then where the hell was he for 8 years? What did he eat? Who did he live with? Who made him change his name? Who lied to everyone all those years? Who took the donation money?" No one had answers. Her husband entered the room and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe they just don't want to get involved." Maria turned to him. "Then let us poor folks take care of our own." She opened her laptop and posted on Facebook. "Houston Police, you don't have to look far. Janie still lives 2 blocks from your station. Rudy wasn't missing. He was locked up by his mother. If that's not a crime, then these laws no longer serve people like us." The post spread rapidly, thousands of shares, but that was all. Rudy's cousin, Lucas, 29, once tried calling the Harris County District Attorney's office. He said, "I asked, if someone's locked in a house, their name and identity controlled, brainwashed, forced to work without pay, isn't that a crime?" They said there needs to be a complaint from the victim. Without it, they can't investigate. Lucas paused before continuing. But Rudy doesn't dare speak. He's still afraid of her. He's the victim, but he's been robbed of even the right to ask for justice. In a text thread between Rudy and an old friend, later released, he wrote, "I'm okay. I don't want to cause trouble for Mom. She's already lost too much." Another line sent around 3 a.m. "I think I don't know what boundaries are anymore. Everything feels blurry, like water in a bathtub." After the press conference, several reporters tried to reach Rudy. They went to Janie's house, but the door remained shut. No one responded. Rumors swirled that Rudy had left, that he was staying with a family friend, that he was receiving psychological treatment, but nothing could be verified. A local journalist wrote, "He's like a ghost. He re-entered the world, then vanished as if he'd never returned." as if Rudy was just a story we needed to close, because continuing it would be too inconvenient. Meanwhile, Janie continued to post on her personal Facebook. She changed her profile photo to one of her and Rudy, old, faded, taken at a park. Pinned at the top of her page, "Thank God for bringing my son back to me. No matter what anyone says, I am still his mother. I love my child." Beneath were hundreds of comments, half congratulatory, half furious. One person wrote, "If you love your child, why did you lock him up?" She didn't reply, just deleted the comment and blocked the user. From the legal system, every door was shut. No search warrants, no request for psychological evaluations, no investigation into the GoFundMe accounts, no verification of residency. No one asked, "Why doesn't a 25-year-old man have any form of ID?" Everything abnormal was dismissed as not serious enough. Perhaps what angers Rudy's family most isn't that Janie walks free. It's that everyone acts as if it never happened, as if Rudy was just a runaway kid who came home. End of story. Another cousin, Thomas, said during a local radio interview, "I don't need to see her in prison. I just want someone to stand up and say, 'What you did was wrong. You hurt people, and you should be held accountable.'" But no one says that. No one wants to open their mouth. And in that silence, I hear Rudy's scream louder than ever. Rudy is now living with a family friend, a fact confirmed through intermediaries. But the location remains undisclosed. He doesn't answer messages, posts nothing on social media, appears at no events. People say he walks a lot, never carrying a phone. Once, someone spotted him standing for a long time in front of a pet store, staring at a dog in a cage like it was something that used to be him. He didn't buy anything. He only walked away when the sky began to darken. Rudy's return was once called a miracle. But in the end, it's a miracle no one wants to talk about, not because it didn't happen, but because it forced us to confront the system we trust. And that system, like an unlocked door, let the captor walk through without ever being questioned. There was a time when people called Rudy the boy who returned from the dead. The media used the word miracle. The internet overflowed with sympathy, and the community was shaken. But miracles, like all miracles, don't last long. And the boy who returned from the dead, did he ever truly come back to life? A volunteer psychologist who met Rudy in a few brief sessions said, "He doesn't make eye contact, but it's not exactly fear. It's more like he's looking through people, as if they're not real." In one of his rare recent appearances, Rudy stood for a long time in front of a graffiti wall, vibrant splashes of color, chaotic, with no clear composition. A little boy asked, "Do you think it's pretty, mister?" Rudy was silent, then softly said, "It looks like the inside of my head." The family friend Rudy now lives with, a woman named Deborah, said, "He doesn't talk much, but sometimes he sits for hours in front of the computer, just watching the background color change. Once he asked me, 'Do you think colors have feelings?' I asked why. He said, 'Because I think red is the mother. Red covers everything, but when you touch it, it hurts.'" Some days, Rudy walks very far on his own. No wallet, no phone. He often visits the public library, not to borrow books, just to stand near the children's section, where the illustrations show families, mothers cooking in kitchens, children riding bicycles, and safety that seems as simple as a hug. Rudy just watches. He doesn't touch a single book. Someone once tried asking Rudy, "If you could go back to the past, what would you do differently?" He thought for a long time, a very long time, then answered, "I'm not sure there is a past. I think I never really started." Many psychologists believe Rudy is suffering from post-captivity Stockholm syndrome, coupled with complex PTSD. At times, Rudy told Deborah, "I still hear my mother's voice, not in my ears, in my head, like sound with a body." He once asked, "Does it make me a bad person if I miss the one who kept me prisoner?" A question no one can answer. On social media, some have begun saying Rudy was actually complicit, that he stayed by choice, that no one kept him there but himself. But they've never lived in a house without locks, only distorted trust. They've never lived in a world where the captor is the only source of affection. In Houston, a student group started a campaign called "My Name is Rudy," calling for a case review and investigation into police accountability. The group received threats, posts were removed, and no one processed the petition. The posters featuring Rudy's face, young, with a lost look, were ripped down by the second day on the lamppost. Someone wrote over it, "Go back to your mommy." And somewhere in Houston, Janie still lives, uncharged. She still posts online, still disables comments, still shares photos of candles and flowers. She has never apologized, nor has she ever been forced to. Many in Rudy's family no longer say her name. Some call her that woman, others her. And Rudy, in a private therapy session, referred to Janie as a fake rain. It's wet. It covers everything, but it's not real, and it doesn't help anything grow. The journalists who once pursued the story have mostly moved on. The story is no longer hot. No one was arrested. Nothing new emerged. One wrote on a personal blog, "Some stories don't end with truth. They end with silence, and some victims don't need more pain. Only that we never forget they were real." On his 27th birthday, Rudy held no celebration, no cake, no candles. Deborah asked, "Is there anything you'd like me to do for you?" He replied, "Could you call me Rudy? Twice? Once in the morning, once before bed." Deborah did. He said nothing, but for the first time in months he slept more than 5 hours. No one knows what Rudy's future will be. No conviction, no justice, no restitution. Only a young man walking through a city, carrying lost years with no idea where to begin again. And sometimes he dreams of the door at the end of the hallway, the one Mrs. Rosa once pointed to, saying Rudy was inside. Maybe, in that dream, the door opens, but no one is behind it. Only an empty room, with soft light pouring through a window. A place quiet enough to begin living like a regular person, if that is even possible. A miracle is when someone returns. But justice is when no one has to disappear in the first place.